What if I told you that the same company building rockets to Mars just made one of the strangest acquisitions in tech history? Not a satellite company, not a chip manufacturer, a coding tool that most regular people have never even heard of. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why this deal could reshape how every single app, website, and piece of software gets built for the next decade. This is not a small story buried in some tech blog. This is a $60 billion bet that connects rockets, artificial intelligence, and the future of every software developer on the planet. The timing alone should raise your eyebrows. And the people involved make this even stranger than it sounds. Before we go further, if you are someone who wants to actually understand where technology is heading instead of just reacting to headlines, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel breaks down exactly these kinds of stories every single week. Trust me, you do not want to miss what comes after this one. Let's start with the basics, because not everyone watching knows what Cursor actually is. Cursor is an AI-powered coding tool, essentially an editor where artificial intelligence writes, fixes, and improves code alongside a human developer. It became one of the fastest-growing software products in recent memory, used by both individual programmers and massive enterprise teams. Think of it as a supercharged version of a text editor, except the AI inside it can practically code an entire feature on its own. To really appreciate how big this deal is, you need to understand how quickly Cursor rose to prominence in the first place. Just a few years ago, it was a relatively unknown startup competing against giants like Microsoft's GitHub Copilot. Through aggressive product development and a genuinely better developer experience, it managed to win over both individual coders and entire engineering departments at large companies. That kind of rapid trust building in a crowded market is exactly what makes a company attractive for an acquisition this large. On June 16, 2026, SpaceX filed paperwork with the Securities and Exchange Commission for an all-stock acquisition of Cursor valued at $60 billion. Yes, the rocket company. The same SpaceX that launches astronauts and satellites is now buying one of the hottest AI coding startups in the world. This was not a small-side investment. This was a full acquisition. To understand why this matters, you need to look at the numbers behind Cursor itself. The company was generating approximately $4 billion in annualized revenue at the time of the deal. Out of that, $2.6 billion was coming specifically from enterprise accounts, meaning large companies paying serious money to use it. That is not a scrappy startup anymore. That is a business with real, proven demand. It is worth pausing here to think about what an all-stock deal actually means for everyone involved. Instead of paying cash, SpaceX is essentially trading ownership shares for Cursor's business, tying Cursor's founders and early employees directly to SpaceX's future success. This is a common structure in massive tech deals because it conserves cash while still rewarding the acquired company's team if the combined business performs well. It also signals confidence, because SpaceX is betting its own stock value on this integration actually working. Now here is where the story gets even more interesting. SpaceX merged with Elon Musk's AI company xAI earlier in 2026, combining rocket technology with artificial intelligence under one roof. Sources report that a joint AI coding model has been quietly in development for several months, trained using xAI's massive Colossus supercomputer infrastructure. This is not just Cursor staying the same company with new owners. This is Cursor being fused with one of the most powerful AI training systems on Earth. Colossus itself deserves a moment of explanation, because it is not just another server farm somewhere. It is widely considered one of the largest and most powerful AI training clusters ever built, originally constructed to push xAI's Grok models forward. Feeding a coding-focused model through that level of infrastructure means the resulting product could potentially train faster, handle larger code bases, and improve more rapidly than tools built on smaller compute budgets. In a market where raw computing power increasingly determines model quality, this gives the new combined entity a real structural advantage. This new joint model is expected to ship inside two places. The first is Cursor itself, upgrading the existing product millions of developers already use. The second is a brand new product reportedly called Grok Build, suggesting an entirely new coding platform built from scratch around this combined technology. If both of these launch as planned, it would mean Musk's AI ecosystem suddenly has a serious foothold in software development, not just chatbots or image generation. Let's talk about timing, because timing here tells its own story. Just 4 days before this acquisition was filed, on June 12th, SpaceX completed a $75 billion IPO, debuting on the NASDAQ under the ticker SPCX. So within the same week that SpaceX became a publicly traded company, it was already spending billions on an AI coding acquisition. That is an aggressive, almost breathtaking pace of expansion for a company that just opened itself up to public investors. Normally, when a company goes public, there is a quiet period where leadership focuses on stabilizing investor confidence before making bold moves. SpaceX appears to be doing the exact opposite, using its fresh public market credibility to immediately pursue one of the largest acquisitions in software history. This sends a clear message to Wall Street and to competitors alike that SpaceX intends to move fast and expand aggressively into new markets. Whether that confidence is justified or reckless is something analysts will be debating for months. Why would a rocket company want a coding tool at all? The honest answer is that modern rockets, satellites, and autonomous systems run on enormous amounts of software. SpaceX does not just build hardware, it builds the code that controls guidance systems, life support, scheduling, and ground operations. Owning a leading AI coding platform means SpaceX could potentially accelerate its own internal software development while also competing in the booming external market for coding tools. There is also a less obvious financial angle worth mentioning here. Enterprise software companies like Cursor often carry much higher profit margins than hardware-heavy businesses like rocket manufacturing. By folding a high-margin software business into its operations, SpaceX may be diversifying its revenue streams beyond launches and satellite internet through Starlink. This kind of diversification can make a company more resilient to slowdowns in any single business line, which is attractive to long-term investors. This deal is expected to close as early as the third quarter of 2026, but it is still pending regulatory approval. Government regulators will likely look closely at this, given how much market power is concentrating around a handful of AI companies. A deal this size, this fast, after an IPO this large, is exactly the kind of thing that draws scrutiny from antitrust regulators. So while the deal is filed, it is not guaranteed to close without conditions or delays. Regulatory scrutiny in this case could focus on a few specific concerns. One is whether combining Cursor's developer data and xAI's compute resources creates an unfair advantage that smaller competitors simply cannot match. Another is whether Elon Musk's growing web of companies spanning rockets, social media, AI, and now coding tools represents too much concentrated influence over critical technology infrastructure. These are not simple questions, and regulators in different countries may reach very different conclusions. Now let's zoom out and talk about what this actually means for the future of coding as a profession. AI coding tools have already changed how software gets written, with tools like Copilot, Cursor, and Claude Code cutting development time dramatically on certain projects. When a company with this much capital and computing power enters the space, it tends to accelerate the entire industry's pace. Developers who were already adapting to AI assistants may now see even faster, more capable tools arriving sooner than expected. There is a real possibility this changes the competitive landscape entirely. Right now, companies like Microsoft, with GitHub Copilot, and Anthropic, with Claude Code, are leading voices in AI-assisted development. A combined SpaceX and xAI coding platform, backed by Colossus-level computing power, could become a serious new contender almost overnight. For developers, this likely means more options, more competition, and potentially lower prices as these companies fight for market share. It is also worth considering how this might affect pricing across the entire industry, not just for Cursor's direct competitors. When one major player suddenly gains access to nearly unlimited compute and capital, smaller AI coding startups may struggle to keep up on price or performance. This could lead to consolidation, where smaller companies either get acquired themselves or simply fade out of the market. For consumers and developers, that often means fewer choices in the long run, even if short-term competition looks fierce. But there is also a more cautious way to read this story. Big tech acquisitions do not always deliver on their promises, and integration between very different company cultures can be messy. Rocket engineers and AI researchers and software startup teams do not automatically work well together just because money changed hands. Whether Grok Build actually ships and whether it lives up to the hype will only become clear over the coming months. History gives us plenty of examples where ambitious tech mergers failed to live up to their initial promise. Company cultures clash, key talent leaves after acquisitions close, and integrating different technology stacks often takes far longer than executives publicly admit. Cursor's existing engineering team built their product with a very specific philosophy and workflow, and forcing rapid integration with xAI's infrastructure could create friction rather than the seamless upgrade everyone is hoping for. Patience, in this case, might be more realistic than excitement. What we do know for certain is that this acquisition signals something bigger than just one company buying another. It signals that the boundaries between industries are dissolving, where a rocket company can casually become a major player in software development tools. It signals that the capital flowing into AI right now is almost unprecedented, with $60 billion deals happening in the same week as massive public offerings. And it signals that coding, as a skill and as an industry, is being treated as strategically important as building actual physical infrastructure. For everyday developers and people just curious about technology, the takeaway is simple. The tools you use to write code today will likely look very different a year from now. Companies with enormous resources are racing to dominate this space, and that race tends to produce faster innovation, even if it comes with messiness along the way. Whether you are a student learning to code or a senior engineer at a major company, this is a space worth watching closely. If you are someone actively working in software right now, the smartest move is probably to stay flexible rather than commit completely to any single tool. Platforms and pricing models are shifting so quickly that loyalty to one ecosystem could leave you behind if a competitor suddenly leaps ahead. Keep experimenting with new releases as they come out, and pay attention to which tools actually save you time versus which ones simply generate hype. The developers who adapt fastest to these changes will likely benefit the most from this entire wave of consolidation. So that is the full story behind SpaceX's stunning $60 billion acquisition of Cursor and why it might quietly reshape the future of software development. We covered the deal itself, the numbers behind Cursor, the xAI and Colossus connection, the regulatory hurdles ahead, and what this means for developers moving forward. Technology stories like this move incredibly fast, and most channels only give you the headline without the context behind it. If this video helped you understand something you were confused about before, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, because this channel exists specifically to break down stories like this one. Drop a comment below telling me what you think. Do you believe this deal will actually deliver on its promises, or is it just another big tech bet that fades away? I read every single comment, and I want to know what you think is coming next in this AI coding race. Thanks for watching Future Tech Insight, and I will see you in the next video.